Hello, welcome back to my Thoughtful Thursdays video channel where we talk about important topics both inside and outside the church. Today we're going to be talking about that word that many people can only whisper out loud. You know, oh, don't make me say it out loud. It starts with an S and it ends with an X and it rhymes with the word hex. You know, S-E-X. But according to the church, it is better known as, you want to teach my baby what? I better keep it down or my new neighbors right next door are going to be like, what is our neighbor doing in his backyard? Sex is such a taboo subject in today's society, especially in regards to faith. I remember when I was young and I was a virgin in high school, I was mystified by even the word alone. Sex, it's such a crazy thing. In fact, one year for Twin Day back in high school, my friends Casey Harrison and I decided to make shirts where we spray painted the word S-E-X across the shirts of all of us using a stencil and spray paint. We just thought it was so hilarious and so funny that every once in a while, as we're out marching and making our little formations, that occasionally the band director would look out and see the words S-E-X across the field. I think we got at best a little chuckle from our band director. We were so rebellious, but we thought we were so hilarious having such a mysterious word on our chest. We were so cool, obviously. I'm pretty sure that none of us had ever actually had sex before. Not that we didn't want to, just the opportunity never presented itself, mainly because, well, we were nerdy. And I mean, I played the saxophone in band. I just wasn't that cool. It's probably hard for all of my followers right now to look at this image and like, I can't believe he wasn't fighting all those ladies off with sticks. We thought that the word was funny. It was daring. We were petrified by it. I remember we were walking around the halls later, all together in a row so that you could spell out the word S-E-X, and we were getting giggles from all of our classmates. And all of a sudden, we saw one of our deans and we split apart down the hall faster than a speeding ticket. I mean, can you imagine if they knew that we had spelled out this crazy word, sex? I laugh now when I look back at that time. The Christian church isn't known for their amazing views on sex education. Let's be honest, that isn't anything too controversial. The church, and this was me for a really long time, had been behind the abstinence movement. All sex outside of marriage is sinful and you shouldn't do it, which of course has led to deep feelings of shame and remorse by normal individual people who do end up making that decision and then feeling in some way like they are now used in some way or less than the ideal, which has of course led to Christians to put pressure on sex education classes to only teach abstinence in schools because that is what they want for their children, which in tail leads to sex education like this in the schools.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Just don't do it, promise? Okay, everybody take some rubbers. You're gonna be having a lot of urges. You're gonna wanna take off your clothes and touch each other. But if you do touch each other, you will get chlamydia and die.
Ah, gee. Of course, if they actually passed out condoms, that will probably be a good thing. But we all know that the leaders in the abstinence movement are not okay with condoms being passed out to teenagers, which is part of why the subtitle of this video is called, "Do you want to teach my baby what?" This is just another example of the things that the church taught, that I taught, that we were wrong about. Look, the evidence is alarmingly clear. It is screaming in our face clear. Study after study after study after study after study after study show that abstinence-only sex ed programs are not effective. They do not protect against teen pregnancy. They do not protect against STIs. They do not keep teenagers from engaging in sexual activity. What they are really good at, though, is that when teens have sex, which they're going to, the stats don't lie, your church isn't better than anyone else's. They feel a lot more shame for it. They feel dirty. They are more than likely not prepared for it. They will commit riskier sexual encounters because they are not prepared for these encounters. And in youth groups across the country, teenagers are taught purity over and over again. You have to remain pure, a beautiful, unblemished bride, as if sex will completely ruin you. I've been in church circles where people talk about this idea of used chewing gum. You have to save yourself for your future husband because if you somehow have sex before then it's like you're a piece of used chewing gum. And nobody wants a piece of used chewing gum. Gross. People say that? I guess I didn't realize that women enjoying sex or making decisions about their own sex was something that made them used. You see, it's really hard for people who are steeped in patriarchy to understand that women can make decisions about their own bodies and what they want to do with them. Interestingly enough, I never heard the same rhetoric about teenage boys. They were never used chewing gum. And I worked in youth ministry for quite some time. It kind of feels like maybe the men made up these rules. And you have these groups across the country who are praying that Jesus will be able to restore teenagers' virginity, to make them clean again, to make them pure again, white as the snow. And it's all gross. It smells of abuse and patriarchy, and I hate it all. What do I think about sex education? It is my belief that it should be a mandatory class for everyone that has age-appropriate lessons taught throughout the entire childhood all the way up through adolescence. It should be based on factual and scientific information that isn't based on guilt and fear. That's my belief. Everyone should receive the same education that is taught from a qualified educator from a curriculum that is authorized to be taught in such a class. And I know that's an unpopular opinion, especially amongst the uber religious, but we have to listen to the actual facts and not just anecdotal evidence of a few people. This can't be a reason for why it isn't taught in schools. Well, I taught my kids about sex and they were just fine. Maybe they were. That's great that your case study of 3 people had a high success rate. However, for the vast majority of people, that is not the case. The numbers tell us otherwise. It's just like seatbelts. Well, I've never worn a seatbelt before and I did just fine. For the vast majority of people, the overwhelming data shows that seatbelts save lives. And I know that people have said things like this also, but I want to be able to have that conversation with my own children. Once again, the vast majority of people don't have that conversation with their children. They don't have these really great sex talks that they think that they do. Sex talks aren't that good. The teen definitely doesn't want to talk about it, and they still end up having abstinence-based talks that don't provide for actual protections when the teen decides to have sex. Look, I want parents to talk about sex. I want kids to have open conversations with their parents about sex. If abstinence is something that you want to talk about in your household, that is wonderful. Absolutely. Please, in concert with what they are being taught in school, you should have those conversations. I needed it. I was taught the most basic facts about STDs from my middle school PE teacher named Mr. Panza. I was not taught sex education. The other thing that I want to mention is that I'm not against abstinence, as I said before. Abstinence can be one of the options taught that is presented to teenagers as a way to avoid certain things. The facts are clear. When more options are presented, when students understand what they are learning, when they have all the facts before them laid out on the table, students that have comprehensive sex education typically wait longer than those who do not to have sex. Which, isn't that what the church wants all along anyway? The opposite is true. For those who grew up thinking that sex is some uber sacred thing that can take away from your purity, who are taught that all sex before marriage is sin, who are not given sound scientific data, have sex earlier. And when they do have sex, they are riskier. This is a big topic for the church. The way that we have taught about sex leads to more teenage pregnancies, to more STDs, to more abortions, and to riskier sexual practices. Not only that, but it has caused immense shame in people who were led to believe that they were somehow dirty or used now. If a person decides to wait to have sex, that's wonderful. I applaud them. I think that's a great decision to make. All the more power to them to make that decision for themselves after they have been taught all about sex. However, that decision should not be forced upon them by a parent or by their religion. We can do better. We have to. Friends, that is all the time we have this week. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at panhandling. You won't want to miss it. Join me back here next week, same time, same place.